I recently went back to my college campus to talk to a costuming class in the theater department about disability representation, since they were learning about this as it pertains to the theater industry, and it got me personally thinking a little more about this. For those of you who don't know, I'm Laura Youngblood, and this is my channel From Laura's Perspective. I discuss a lot of social justice issues in my numerous video essays, as well as the many facets of the entertainment industry, in addition to essays on nature, history, art, literature, current events, and so much more. So please watch this video the whole way through, and if you like what you see, check out more, and join my video essay library by clicking on the subscribe icon. But enough about that. Let's get down to talking about how persons with disabilities have been represented in plays and musicals, how that's changed, and how it still needs to change. In early plays, vaudevilles, revues, and musicals, any disabled character featured generally served as either a villain, a punchline, or a charity case. And while this has expanded into some better representation, a lot of these characters often do still serve in the roles they were originally restricted to. The most notable example of this I can think of is Tiny Tim, Bob Cratchit's son, who uses a crutch in Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, which, although it was originally a novel, it is very often adapted for the stage. This archetype seems harmless, as this disabled little boy is cast in a sympathetic light. However, that's exactly the problem. Tiny Tim is shown as nothing more than someone to be felt sorry for, in need of charity, and his very purpose in the story is as a pawn in Ebenezer Scrooge's personal journey towards changing his heart into a more generous and giving one. In the mega-popular, no pun intended, musical Wicked, Elphaba's younger sister Nessa Rose uses a wheelchair for mobility due to a birth defect that contributed to their mother's death in childbirth. Technically, Nessa Rose could be considered a disabled villain, as this is a girl who eventually becomes to be known as the Wicked Witch of the East. But remember, the whole point of Wicked is to turn its source material, the Wizard of Oz, on its head by giving the Wicked Witch of the West a voice and telling her side of the story, and show that maybe she's not quite the villain she was initially made out to be, and neither is her disabled sister. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Is Nessa Rose a proper representation of wheelchair users? Why or why not? Either way, 95% of the time, disabled characters such as these are played by a non-disabled actor. Moreover, these non-disabled actors are more likely than their disabled counterparts to receive a Tony Award or other honor for playing a disabled character. Theater dates all the way back to ancient Greece and Rome, when people with disabilities were hardly considered full-fledged members of society, let alone were their mobility needs considered when it came to structuring and building public spaces, including theaters. In recent years, initiatives have been taken to redesign auditoriums so that disabled audiences can see shows. Some performances even include captioning and sign language translation for audiences who are deaf and hard of hearing, and audio description for visually impaired audiences. But at the end of the day, these auditoriums still seem to assume that most, if not all, audience members do not experience any kind of substantial disability. They're still quite unaccommodating to people with sensory issues, such as autism spectrum disorder, photosensitive epilepsy, chemical sensitivities, and involuntary movements and sounds that can come with disabilities like Tourette's or cerebral palsy. And even setting aside physically accessible seating areas for people with mobility equipment does little to change the structure of or assumptions embedded in the space if there is only room for a handful of people with wheelchairs. And when we talk about making theaters accessible, this should also apply to disabled actors, not just disabled audiences. Contrary to popular belief, people with all kinds of disabilities are often very good actors, having not only the ability, but also the skills and talent needed to authentically portray a role on stage. And not just in the roles of disabled characters either. So why don't we see an awful lot of disabled actors on stage? Because most theater companies don't want to provide the accommodations these actors need to perform as best they can. I'll discuss more about what can be done about this in the next section. As I mentioned earlier, it seems that in most major theater productions, disabled characters such as Nessa Rose from Wicked, Helen Keller and Anne Sullivan in The Miracle Worker, and Crutchy from Newsies are played by non-disabled actors. This may not sound all that bad, but when you think about it, it's actually quite condescending and harmful towards people who have the same kinds of disabilities as the aforementioned characters. In the case in which the disabled character serves as a villain or living joke, the non-disabled character is essentially mocking and appropriating the character's disability. In the case in which the character is a complex, authentic representation of the disability, the non-disabled actor is taking away the disabled voice and essentially speaking over this population, as they've been doing for far too long. We could see more characters played by actors who just happen to be in wheelchairs if stages were designed in such a way that the actor can push their wheelchair on and off the stage and in and out of the wings. But unfortunately, many stages are designed in such a way that crowds it and makes them unable to do this. Moreover, actors in wheelchairs and with prosthetic limbs need special costumes that are easier for them to change in and out of. If a theater company is simply willing to learn how to make these costumes, there's more potential for these kinds of actors to shine in a role they truly belong in. It may take some effort and money, but some very talented blind and visually impaired actors could really shine on the stage with the help of a Braille script or with a stage that better accommodates the white canes with which they feel around for objects. Going back to what I was saying earlier about people with sensory processing disorders, there are ways in which theaters could change and adjust the lighting and sound, which would be helpful not only to audiences with sensory issues, but give more opportunity to actors with these impairments. In 2015, a revival of Duncan Sheik and Steven Sater's Spring Awakening, a musical I've discussed in some of my previous videos, was performed at the Brooks Atkinson Theater by an all-deaf cast in English and American Sign Language simultaneously. The actress playing Anna was none other than Ali Storker, who is famous for being the first Broadway actress to use a wheelchair for mobility, and even made a guest appearance on an episode of Glee's 4th season. Little things like this open the door for more people with a variety of disabilities to claim their rightful place in the theater industry, but there's still a long way to go. Thank you all so much for watching. When it comes to the entertainment industry, particularly theater, accommodating and representing actors and audiences with disabilities is usually the last thing on our minds. It's not that it's not possible for disabled people to act on stage, just that theaters are so unaccommodating and unaccepting of them and would rather work with non-disabled actors who don't have their unique needs. But it's 2022 now and about to be 2023, and we need to start doing a better job of making sure that the disabled, one of the most disadvantaged populations out there, have equal opportunity with their non-disabled counterparts when it comes to pursuing their goals and dreams. Check out some of the links on your screen in which I talk a little more about theater and my preferences of plays and musicals. And also check out the rest of my channel where I post video essays on many different topics, so one is sure to be of interest of you. And if all that tickles your fancy, quit stalling and subscribe to my channel.